You have caught these cats in the act. I hunt medical serial killers. Ask me anything. Dr. Michael Swango is one of the prolific medical serial killers in history. He murdered a number of our nation's heroes in veterans hospitals. On August 16th, HLN, CNN headline news, aired the show Very Scary People, Dr. Death, detailing the investigation and conviction of this doctor based largely upon my book Behind the Murder Curtain. It will continue to air on HLN throughout the week. The story is nothing short of terrifying and almost unbelievable, about a member of the medical profession murdering patients since his time in medical school. Ask me anything. Do other medical professionals generally support you for weeding out murderers who abuse their profession or grief you for bringing their profession into disrepute? Great question. It has been a mixed bag. Some are grateful and others unhappy that I have exposed the dark side of their profession. I continually preach that the overwhelming majority of healthcare professionals are honest, hardworking, dedicated individuals who perform miracles every day. The doctors you've investigated, were their associates suspicious of them, or were they oblivious to the fact that this was going on? There are always one or two associates who become suspicious, but the majority of coworkers don't want to believe that one of their own is intentionally murdering patients. How do you tell the difference between someone who is malicious vs someone who is just totally incompetent? What are the most telling data points that signal to you this doctor is not normal? Are there any personality traits that you see show up in the medical professionals you catch? That's a lot of really good questions. There are 26 red flags identified in my book, but the short answer is the repeated administration of drugs to patients that were not prescribed these drugs. For instance, epinephrine or insulin to a patient that had no medical necessity for these drugs. Many of these killers suffer from Munchausen syndrome by proxy. They intentionally harm a patient to show the staff how well they respond to a medical emergency code. For those uncertain what Munchausen syndrome is, Munchausen syndrome is a mental illness in which a person deliberately acts as if he had a physical or mental illness when he knows he is not really sick. In your opinion, what are some of the most crazy stories of medical serial killers? I'm sure all of them are crazy, but which ones are extra crazy? They are similar in some respects and unique in others. I think the nurse in Italy, who took a selfie with her and the patient she had just murdered, is pretty crazy. How many medical serial killers exist, approximately? I hope this is really rare, because when you need a doctor you really need one. It is impossible to give an accurate number. Historically about 150 have been identified. Does that number include nurses or just physicians? Both. What's the most interesting way someone was caught? The autopsies, toxicology, and the science of forensics is always very interesting to read and study. Did most serial killers have a target victim? What about general practitioners? Did they pick a certain type of victim? Very sick patients in the intensive care units are usually the victims, but anyone could be a potential target. Do you think that they think they are coloring the herd, or are they just easy targets? Easy targets usually, sometimes they are angry at the patient for being annoying. Do you think there were more serial killers in the 70s and 80s, or do you think there are just as many around today? I think about things like DNA technology, cell phones, cameras, and wonder how much easier it is to get caught today versus back then. None of those traditional forensic techniques will usually apply to medical serial killers who conduct their crimes in sterile healthcare settings. What was the most disturbing case you've come across? They are all very disturbing. The case of Dr. Cornack in Albany was very disturbing because he was lying to veterans, putting them into research projects he knew they were medically ineligible to be in. Have you looked into the investigation of Dr. Harold Shipman? Anything to learn that would pick his like up sooner? I met with detectives in England about this case and others online. There were many red flags missed on that case as well, like him always denying the need for autopsies and the horrendous death rate of his patients. Jesus Christ, those are not subtle flags at all. How did you get into this line of work? Initially watching too many Columbo crime shows and saying I can do that. Never looked back. Do you feel that credentialing departments in hospitals are catching more of these doctors from practicing? Yes. One of the great things to come from the Swango case is the improvement in medical credentialing. I'm guardedly optimistic that he would not be allowed to practice today, even after changing his name and lying about his background. Is it easy for you to come home and just relax after a long day of work? It's sleeping sometimes that's a problem. What are your views on assisted suicide and euthanasia? No, I'm not stating that Dr. Michael Swango did that. I'm support it, if done legally and ethically. Can you expand on this? What would you consider ethical? Only if a person is terminal ill? What about neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, where a person might have lost the mental capability to give full consent anymore, or contradict requests for euthanasia they provided earlier in their disease? What about euthanasia for minors? I'm quite interested in your opinion. That's why I think it takes a team of professionals to help decide this question. Too much responsibility for one person to take on. Do you have any medical experience yourself? If not, how did you prepare yourself for recognizing the killers? I had the great fortune of being tutored by Dr. Michael Batten, the world-renowned forensic pathologist who worked on all my cases. Of the 26 red flags listed in your book, which were the most surprising to conceptualize or link? The fact that staff will refer to one of their workers as the angel of death, and they still remain working without any administrative action taken against them until the media or law enforcement is involved. Can you please elaborate on this? What do you mean that they were referred to as angels of death? Do you mean that one of their colleagues had identified that they were doing this? Or did they mean this in a positive sense? I just don't understand what the linkage is. I mean that the talk amongst the staff is that this person is killing people and gets the nickname of Angel of Death, but remains on duty. In the Richard Williams case, a patient heard that, ran out of the hospital, and was returned, only to die unexpectedly the next night after getting a visit from Williams. My girlfriend talks about how there are cases where someone who is not dead, but critically injured, and is an organ donor will have their organs harvested by surgeons, since they are in need, and not many people would ask questions thinking their death was from the injury. Is this a thing that happens? Have you come across this? It's a scary thought. I have heard about this mostly in Asian countries. Do you still go to the doctor? How does someone in your line of work who's seen behind the curtain not succumb to paranoia and such? What do you do? Of course I still go to doctors and hospitals. You can read about bad lawyers and accountants, but when you need their services you have to take a leap of faith. Again, the odds of being a victim of thesis people are extremely small. I didn't see this asked already, but how did they become aware of the doctor's acts? Like, did someone analyze the doctor's trend levels and just notice that this person has an higher level of deaths or something? It usually starts when a coworker notices that every time a particular nurse or physician is on duty the death rate goes up. He takes a week off and the death rate goes down. How common do you think doctors are abusing their position? Why do you think they are killing patients? Again, the overwhelming majority are terrific honest caregivers. Some have issues from their youth, some have substance abuse issues, and others are just pure evil. What was the most difficult to prove case, and why? The case of Richard Williams, indicted but never convicted in Missouri. The toxicology proved too unreliable for the prosecutor to continue the case. At the risk of sounding like one of your subjects, I'm an engineer, not a medical professional FYI. How easy is it to be in the medical field and carry out these acts without getting caught? No one wants to believe that a person who has taken an oath to save lives actually is intentionally taking lives. These people often demonstrate to their coworkers how well they react to codes and have saved some lives. So people can't seem to believe that at the same time they are murdering some patients. Do you find that each one focuses on a specific illness or issue? Or have there been any that will only kill if there are specific issues? Do they think they are being merciful, or are they enjoying it? It has nothing to do with the patient, it only has to do with the thrill they receive from committing these acts.